House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries is applying pressure to Democrats to redraw Maryland's congressional map, meaning the state legislators there. He met with members of that legislature in Annapolis today and says redistricting is necessary to counter moves set in motion by President Trump.
Our perspective is clear. When they go low, we strike back hard in the best interest of the people of Maryland and in the best interest of the people of the United States of America.
Reporter panel time. Julia Manchester covers the White House for The Hill. Marianna Sotomayor, congressional reporter for The Washington Post. Marianna, let me talk to you about that because there's a rhetorical shift there. When they go low, we punch back? Is that the new phraseology now? Michelle Obama, call your office.
Yes.
Because that's all that it used to be. When they go low, no, we go high. Right.
Exactly.
Not anymore.
Nope. Democrats want to strike back, like Jeffries is saying, and that's kind of what's been put in play over the past year. The moment when Trump said, you know what, Texas, please redistrict. Jeffries said, well, we're going to try and find some states where we could do that. You saw how California followed the lead of Texas. It's a little bit of what we continue to see across the country as well. Virginia positioning itself to redistrict it in favor of Democrats because it's likely that Florida obviously will redistrict in favor of Republicans. So it's a little bit of a tit for tat, but Democrats might get stuck in Maryland. And the reason why? Primary filing deadline's actually on Tuesday, and we see the Senate President, Bill Ferguson, still saying senators do not want to vote in support of redistricting here. And that's why you saw Jeffries go to Maryland, go to Annapolis, meet with these senators. He had a one-on-one with Bill Ferguson, and essentially said, well, if you're saying that senators do not want to vote for this, put up the vote, make it public. So he's making a public pressure campaign in the last final hours, but it does not seem likely that Maryland's going to be able to.
And very quickly, there's one Republican House district in Maryland, and what this would mean if it's redrawn is none.
Exactly, no.
Right.
Andy Harris.
This is kind of a Democratic version of what the White House went through in Indiana, where there was Republican resistance to an effort to redistrict to add one seat there. So in the end, this all may be a wash.
Exactly.
What's on your mind?
You know, last night we saw that a number of the president's closest allies met to talk about the midterms.
At the White House.
At the White House. We are getting into campaign season. We know that the president has started to ramp up his domestic travel. He's going to northern Georgia tomorrow to tour a factory, meet with, constituents there. But
Marjorie Taylor Greene's district, where there are like 700 Republicans running to replace her. It's actually, I think, 17, but might as well be 700.
Still a lot. Yeah, and it'll be, I think, a big test of his sway with the conservative base. But also, we're already talking about the State of the Union set for next week. And President Trump said earlier today at the White House that he's going to be talking about the economy. And that's what we heard from that meeting last night, that the economy will be front and center for Republicans. The big question, though, is how does President Trump sell the economy when there still are some issues that Americans are feeling with the economy? So I think you're going to continue to see him focus on prices, in particular drug prices. That's something he talks about quite a bit. Access to home ownership, the Trump accounts, savings accounts for young children. So I think you're going to see more and more of that on the campaign trail.
What do you think? We just had Johnny Olszewski on the program talking about the shutdown. It persists. Like I said, most Americans are not noticing it, probably won't for several weeks, but it's still a deal.
It's still, it's still something that's going on. And, look, I think what makes the shutdown of DHS so interesting and maybe unique is that when Americans go to the airports to fly,
TSA.
They notice that. So, I don't know if we're going to talk about it in the context of the midterms. I don't know if it necessarily impacts the midterms this far out. However, right now, both sides really dug in. Caroline Leavitt saying today that President Trump isn't in contact with any Democrats on Capitol Hill. His team is, but he hasn't had any of those discussions. And she's continuing to blame this on Democrats, saying their counter-proposal they sent last night was essentially unserious.
So, Marianna, Texas, James Tallarico, Jasmine Crockett vying for the Democratic nomination in the United States Senate. There was an interview that wasn't, but it was on YouTube on a program on a network. I think it's called CBS. I think his name is Stephen Colbert. There's an FCC involvement. There's lots of, and Tallarico's raised $2.5 million. amid the controversy.
Yeah, I mean, listen, any candidate would be a fool to not try and use any opportunity to try and fundraise it. And it's amazing how much money he's been able to bring in. Obviously, there is a tit for tat there with Brendan Carr, the FCC commissioner,
Lots of lawyers
blaming Tallarico for fundraising off of this.
Who said what?
Who said
how
what?
was it interpreted? Whatever.
Yes.
But what is fascinating to me about this, quite separate from my parent company, is that had nothing happened, meaning if this had gone on straight as intended, there is no way it would have created the attention, velocity, and possibly fundraising bottom line that is created for Tallarico.
No doubt, no question. And now he's, maybe turning into somewhat of a household name. I mean, not only raising his profile in Texas, but across the board. And we have to remember this is happening amid the Texas Republican Senate primary.
We had Wesley on this program yesterday.
Yes.
Ken Paxton, John Cornyn. That is going down to the wire. No Trump endorsement there, which is interesting in its own respect.
Very interesting. But that'll be an interesting race because we don't know necessarily who's going to, come out of it. I think there's a real unknown. I would say right now Ken Paxton seems to have an advantage, but Hunt is a real wild card in this race.
And 30 seconds, a State of the Union preview from your vantage point.
Well, from Capitol Hill, I mean, you were spot on that Trump needs to talk about the economy. That's what Republicans are dying for. They do not want him to be distracted and start talking about the 2020 election was rigged or going after Democrats. Democrats are a little worried. What if he comes and actually presents a plan on border security, on ICE? There are some Democrats
Of reforms. That try to take some of the sting out of that issue.
Yes. So Democrats are holding tight.
You've given something for all of us to pay close attention to, and we certainly will. Marianna Sotomayor, Julie Manchester, thank you much. Always great to have some candy. It doesn't eat itself.
Perfect.